Hello survivors, hi family and friends, this is Roy from Bootsy Sweetheart's Guide to Life and Other Disappointing Experiences with part 2 of a two-part video series on how I made a beautiful little tote embellished with crochet flower medallions. Let me get one here. Oh. You may remember in a video a little while back we made these simple medallions with just crochet chains. Well, I've used these medallions to make flowers, which I also have a video on, and you'll see, stay with me, how, let me get this beautiful, how nice this tote turned out. So stay with me please and see how I put this together. So I thought I'd do just a quick review on how we put the bag together, prepared the fabric and put the flowers on. I lined the 14 by 14 outer fabric with sort of lightweight craft interfacing to keep some body to the bag. Then I took the crocheted chains that I had made, laid them out on the front panel, and just did a zigzag straight down following some of the lines on the fabric so the stems were standing straight up. This was a great little foot that I found in the sewing box with the tunnel in it. And then sewing and gluing the flower base and the flower to the top of the stems just with simple straight stitches. I cut out some leaves with the pinking shears and felt and added them to add detail and fill out the front panel. Now the inside lining became more involved than I expected. I decided to put 2 pockets in. I'll have videos on pockets at other points. This one is on the inside. That's a Galaxy S9 phone. It fits. The other side will have 3 pockets matching. And then, of course, it wasn't good enough. I had to gild the lily by adding an outside pocket. And what I did here was took 2 pieces of fabric, sewed them together on 3 sides, turned them inside right side out, and then put a binding, a regular quilt, simple quilt binding on the top of the bag, the pocket rather, to ensure that the pocket stays in firm condition and strong. And it also covers, of course, those raw edges where I had turned the bag inside out. I add a little bit of extra protection by back stitching and then cross sewing the top of the pockets. It turned out to be a nice addition. And here again is the Galaxy X9 going in that outside pocket, which is good when you want to just hurry up and throw the phone in. Now the bottom I changed a little bit. I'm keeping a double thickness of the fabric, putting a bottom panel on for accent and keeping the main bag material, the main bag fabric on the bottom. This will add some strength and stability to the bottom of the bag. Just simply stitch across, wrong sides, right sides together. Now fold it out, and now I have a panel in the back. Now I'm going to the front of the bag, adding the bottom panel to that, being careful when I go over the stems, and this will ensure that the stems don't ravel and the crochet comes out. So here's what we have now. Now these are the two parts of the outside of the bag. Put the bag together, lay them together. Now there are two ways. This is very important, by the way. See how I'm matching those seams? I don't really care too much about the top and the bottom matching exactly, but I am concerned about those two seams matching exactly. I put pins in perpendicular to each other to keep the seam as close to perfect as I can. And again, as we say, we leave perfection to the Creator, so hopefully this turns out, oh well, here I broke my own rule. But you want to make sure that that doesn't move. Now, what I've decided to do was make a box bottom, and I'm going to make the box bottom one of two ways. This one I'm cutting out the slots, the corner squares that I'll cut. You can leave them in, but there's a lot of thickness here, so because I have the interfacing and the two front panels and the bottom accent panels all in that fabric layer, so it's very, very thick. I decided to do it this way, just make it easier when we go to create the box bottom. It's just simple square. This is 2 inch by 2 inch. Now I'm going to sew down the side, leave the square open, sew across the bottom, and sew up the other side. You see, this is okay, and now you see where the opening is. That's where that square is. I'm matching the seams from the bottom and the side, and I want to match them as perfectly as I can. And I'm opening up the seams. I want to do that because if you look, there's a lot of fabric here, but that only ensures that the bag is going to be stronger. I have a really home industrial juki which can handle this sewing, so I'm not concerned about sewing it. I'm just concerned that it lays flat and I can match that seam up. And again, this is what it looks like after I've sewn it. And now I can turn the bag out. Now it's starting to look like a bag. Look at how pretty those flowers are. You know, they're simple, and at first you may think, well, you know, they're just simple flowers. I don't know how much they're going to dress up a bag. But they do. And here I'm poking out all the edges. And I'm hoping that the seams match. And they do. They match up pretty well on the side where the base panel is. You'll see the reason for doing that panel that way was to have a little band on the bottom. Now we repeat the whole process for the lining, exactly the way we did the front panels. And I decided to add a little accent to the top of the lining. That was unexpected. So you'll see I added that piece there. It's going to match the handles, and here again I'm concerned about matching seams. When I sewed this together, I really only cared about that. Left a hole in the bottom, I guess about 4 or 5 inches. We're going to need that later on. Now the straps are made just by double folding, making a double bias. Well, it's not bias, but a double binding, and I inserted some iron-on interfacing for stability. The handles now are really substantial. I pin them, and here they clip them in this case, press them down flat, and then I top stitch on both sides to ensure that they hold their shape, and to tack down the fusible interfacing just to be sure. I'm putting the straps in about 2 inches from the side seams. And this is important to make sure they're very vertical. Make sure the straps don't um, um, go off on an angle. So you want to make sure that they're right angles. And it helps with this bag because it has vertical stripes. I'm pinning them first. And I'm of the school where you want to baste sew them into the seam allowance. And here that you want to match. You can match by eye. I just chose to use the ruler, but you can match by eye, even if a smidge off, you won't notice. I just like to double check. I'm a measure 3 times, cut once. Even though that doesn't work with me, I still have to unsew or recut. So, and there. So I'll take this to the machine, and I'll sew across about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, just to ensure that those straps aren't going to move and that they stay fairly square to the lines on the outside of the bag. Don't sew over pins. Ha ha ha. I do more often than I should. I actually had to buy a new needle plate because the other needle plate got hit with the needle so often. Now here I'm making sure that it's parallel to the stripes on the front. You can damage your machine if you hit the needle plate too in the wrong way. Now here it gets a little bit confusing. We put the right sides out of the main bag inside the wrong side out lining. So the facing each other as the fashion fabric and the lining fabric. They're right sides together, you see? And here again I'm matching seams. As a novice quilter, that importance has been exaggerated for me because you have to match seams in quilting or your quilt really looks wonky. Well, the same thing with a bag. If you don't match the seams, you're going to see the seams not matching. They sort of stand out. It gets very exaggerated. Now here I'm just spreading out into quarters and then into halves and quarters. I used my pinkies to pull out the sides of the bag so that any kind of easing got divided up when I was pinning. Now here's the opening on the bottom, and through that we will birth the bag at some point. And then I'm using about a 3/8 inch seam, about a 3/8, to sew the top to the lining, to sew the top of the lining to the top of the bag. This is one way of doing it. There are a couple of ways, of course. I'll have more videos on making bags. Now here's crucial when we come to that seam. Both seams are opened to reduce the bulk and to divide up the bulk. Just a little trick, when I come to this seam opening, I actually glued the seam open on both sides with a glue stick to be doubly sure that they're going to not move on me. The clips and pins are great, but you can't gamble on them shifting. And now we're birthing the bag. Through that tiny little opening, I should have made it a little bit bigger, I am pulling the main bag out through the bottom of the lining. It takes a little time, and you want to be careful. You don't want to pull out any stitches. I'll hit the bag with an iron afterwards just to get the shape back, because this is a like any birth, this is a painful procedure. But it's well worth it in the end. Oh, I love the way this turned out. I like the accent fabric on the inside of the lining on the top. It matches the straps. And I love the bottom, how that turned out. It adds just enough embellishment and just enough interest to the total look of the bag. And the last couple of steps here is forming it to make sure it fits properly, and I do have to now top stitch the top of the bag so the lining remains inside and doesn't roll out, and it also secures the handles a second time, so those handles are not going to come out, because you never know what you carry in one of these totes, especially if you take it on a crafting class or carry water bottles. It's not waterproof. This is 100% cotton, these fabrics, except for the embellishments where I used felt. And you just go completely around. This is about 1/4 inch top stitch. On the bottom, I just took a piece of cardboard, covered it with the fashion fabric and felt, and I put that as an insert to help keep the shape of the tote. The colors are vibrant. I like the way they turned out. That, and there's the bag. It stands up because of the interfacing. I did not add a closure. If you think I should add a closure, it's not too late. I can add a snap, I can add straps, I can add an elastic with buttons. I'm leaning towards button closure. All the seams match up. I'm happy with how it turned out. Hope you are. Well, so here's my bag. Finished. Loving it already. Another project completed. Another project out of the bag. So what do you think? Would you like to make one of these? Give it a try. Look at how nice. It's very, very sturdy. Feels very firm. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for sticking with it. It was more of a demonstration than a tutorial at all. I don't like to do tutorials because I'm not that expert. But in any case, here is my latest project. I'm going to make some calls, have a little snack, and call it a day. So from my craft room to yours, happy crafting. Stay smart, stay safe, stay well. Bye for now.